They called her just a flight attendant and laughed when she asked about the Black Hawk's emergency procedures, until the medevac helicopter lost both pilots over Afghanistan and everyone discovered the coffee server was actually a former Dustoff pilot who had completed more combat rescues than their entire medical aviation unit combined. Watch till the end, because what this woman did next made the Army change their regulations about who can fly life-saving missions. The thin mountain air of Bagram Air Base carried the distinctive sound of UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters as Senior Airman Jennifer Angel Rodriguez served coffee and reviewed passenger manifests in the medical evacuation unit's break room. The sleek utility helicopters sat on the flight line like mechanical lifeline, their twin General Electric T-700 engines and distinctive four-blade rotor systems representing the difference between life and death for wounded American soldiers throughout Afghanistan. To the elite medevac pilots preparing for another day of combat rescue operations, Jennifer was part of the support infrastructure. Just another administrative specialist who handled paperwork and logistics while they flew the most dangerous missions in military aviation. At 30 years old, with long black hair pulled back in a regulation bun and the calm, professional demeanor of someone who'd spent years managing crisis situations, Jennifer moved through the medical unit with quiet efficiency. Her blue administrative uniform identified her as a logistics coordinator responsible for patient manifests, flight schedules, and medical equipment tracking, and she carried herself with the deliberately unremarkable manner of someone who had learned to remain invisible in military environments dominated by high-stress medical operations. What none of the arrogant medevac pilots knew was that Jennifer's expertise with medical helicopter operations came from years of flying the most dangerous rescue missions in military history. What they also didn't know was that Captain Jennifer Angel Rodriguez had more than 520 hours in UH-60 Black Hawks earned during some of the most classified medical evacuation missions with the Army's elite Dustoff units. Her administrative assignment wasn't a career change. It was the perfect cover for investigating a series of navigation system failures that had caused 3 Black Hawk medical helicopters to become lost during emergency rescue missions over the past 4 months, failures that appeared too systematic and coordinated to be coincidental equipment malfunctions. "Hey, coffee girl!" called out Chief Warrant Officer 3 Mike Thompson, a cocky 31-year-old pilot from Oklahoma who'd graduated from flight school with high marks in medical evacuation procedures and an even higher opinion of his life-saving abilities. "Make sure we have enough supplies loaded for today's missions. Some of us have actual lives to save while you're pushing paperwork around." His UH-60L Black Hawk sat on the medical pad like a flying ambulance, its external rescue hoist and medical equipment representing the capability to extract wounded soldiers from the most hostile environments imaginable. Thompson had 187 hours in the Black Hawk and considered himself one of Bagram's most dedicated medevac pilots. Jennifer nodded politely without engaging in conversation and continued reviewing her patient transport logs, methodically checking medical equipment inventories and flight crew assignments that could mean the difference between successful rescue operations and catastrophic mission failures. She'd heard variations of this condescending dismissal countless times over the past 5 months since arriving at Bagram. To Thompson and the other pilots, she was functionally invisible. Someone who handled administrative duties while they mastered the art of combat medical evacuation in the most dangerous airspace in the world. What they didn't know was that Major Jennifer Angel Rodriguez had been one of the most accomplished Black Hawk medical evacuation pilots in the Army before a classified incident had forced her to assume a new identity and transfer to administrative duties. Her previous assignment had been with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment's medical detachment, where she'd flown missions deep behind enemy lines that had saved hundreds of American Special Forces operators while operating in conditions that would have grounded conventional medical helicopters. "Rodriguez, I need those medical supply manifests updated by 10:30 hours. First Sergeant Patricia Hayes called from the operations desk. At 42, Hayes supervised medical logistics with the organizational precision that kept wounded soldiers alive during their most vulnerable moments. "We've got 4 Black Hawks scheduled for high-risk evacuation missions today, and they need complete medical equipment loadouts." Jennifer quietly acknowledged the order and continued her work, strategically positioning herself where she could observe pilot briefings and medical procedures without attracting attention. Her cover job provided perfect access to flight schedules, medical protocols, and navigation systems, exactly the kind of comprehensive information that someone sabotaging Black Hawk operations would need to cause maximum casualties while avoiding detection. The morning flight schedule called for medical evacuation standby operations throughout the Kunar province, a mountainous region where American and Afghan forces were conducting intensive combat operations against Taliban stronghold. 2 Black Hawks would maintain ready status for immediate response to casualty evacuation requests, prepared to extract wounded soldiers from landing zones under active enemy fire. It was exactly the kind of high-stakes life-or-death mission Jennifer had flown dozens of times during her special operations career, when she'd been responsible for developing many of the medical evacuation procedures now used by Army pilots throughout Afghanistan. Chief Warrant Officer Thompson reviewed his mission briefing with the swagger of someone who'd never had to make split-second medical decisions while flying through enemy fire at 100 feet above mountainous terrain. "This should be straightforward," he told his co-pilot, Chief Warrant Officer 2 Lisa Park, an experienced pilot who'd flown Black Hawks in Iraq before deploying to Afghanistan. Taliban fighters can't effectively engage fast-moving helicopters, and medical evacuations always get priority support from ground forces. Jennifer paused in her equipment inventory to listen more carefully. Thompson was making the dangerous error of tactical overconfidence, assuming that medical missions provided automatic protection from enemy action, rather than making medical helicopters high-value targets for insurgent forces. She'd seen pilots with identical attitudes make fatal errors when faced with coordinated enemy attacks designed specifically to shoot down medical aircraft. Medical evacuation missions are actually more dangerous than regular transport flights, Chief Warrant Officer Park replied thoughtfully. Enemy forces specifically target medical helicopters because they know it creates maximum psychological impact and disrupts American operations. We need to be prepared for surface-to-air missiles and coordinated ground fire. Park was absolutely correct, Jennifer thought, while continuing her methodical review of medical equipment readiness. Black Hawk medical evacuation was genuinely the most critical helicopter capability in the American arsenal, but it required constant awareness of evolving threats, precise coordination with ground medical teams, and intimate knowledge of enemy adaptation patterns. Most pilots learned these skills through simulation and controlled training exercises. Jennifer had learned them in actual combat, where tactical errors meant dead American soldiers and lost aircraft. As the 2 Black Hawks prepared for standby operations, Jennifer continued her administrative duties, positioning herself in the Medical Operations Center, where she could monitor radio communications and observe mission coordination procedures. Her cover assignment gave her access to flight schedules, medical protocols, and navigation systems, exactly the kind of detailed intelligence that someone systematically compromising Black Hawk operations would need to coordinate enemy ambushes against medical helicopters. The 2 UH-60L Black Hawks launched for patrol operations at 0845 hours. Their twin T-700-GE-701C engines producing 1,890 horsepower each as they headed toward the dangerous mountain terrain where American forces operated under constant threat of Taliban attack. Jennifer watched from the medical center, her experienced eye automatically noting the subtle differences in each aircraft's medical equipment configuration and crew positioning. Years of special operations medical flying had taught her to identify potential operational vulnerabilities that other observers might miss completely. The Sikorsky UH-60L Black Hawk represented the most versatile medical evacuation helicopter ever built, with a maximum speed of 183 miles per hour, a service ceiling of 19,000 feet, and the ability to carry up to 6 medical litters plus full life support equipment. It was designed specifically to extract wounded personnel from the most hostile environments. Its advanced navigation systems and defensive capabilities made it the backbone of American medical evacuation operations in combat zones worldwide. 51 minutes into their standby patrol, the first indication of serious problems began to emerge through radio communications that Jennifer was monitoring from her administrative station. Dustoff 6-1, we're receiving a priority medical evacuation request from Fire Base Charlie, the Tactical Operations Center reported over the radio. Multiple urgent surgical casualties requiring immediate extraction from a hot landing zone under enemy fire. Jennifer's attention sharpened as she recognized the tactical situation. Firebase Charlie was located in a narrow mountain valley known for sophisticated Taliban ambushes, and medical evacuations from that location had historically resulted in heavy enemy contact. Her experience with classified threat assessment told her that insurgent forces had been specifically targeting medical helicopters in that area, using coordinated tactics designed to maximize aircraft casualties. Dustoff 6-1 and 6-2 proceed immediately to Firebase Charlie for medical evacuation, Chief Warrant Officer Thompson acknowledged over the radio. Multiple wounded American soldiers requiring urgent surgical intervention. Jennifer quickly accessed her classified databases and felt her heart rate spike as she confirmed her worst fear. Intelligence reports indicated that Taliban forces had been observed positioning anti-aircraft weapons in the mountains surrounding Firebase Charlie, specifically targeting the approach routes used by medical helicopters. The evacuation request showed all the characteristics of a coordinated ambush designed to shoot down Black Hawk medical aircraft. Jennifer stepped closer to the radio equipment, her carefully maintained administrative specialist persona beginning to crack as her Black Hawk pilot instincts took complete control. She'd encountered this exact ambush scenario before, during a classified mission in Pakistan, when Taliban forces had used fake casualty reports to lure medical helicopters into sophisticated anti-aircraft traps. Dustoff 6-1, abort the medical evacuation immediately, she called into the radio, completely abandoning her cover. Firebase Charlie is reporting casualties that don't match any known American operations in that area. This is a coordinated ambush using fake medical emergencies to target your aircraft. The operations center erupted in shocked confusion. Medical personnel and officers stared at Jennifer in complete disbelief, unable to process the sight of an administrative specialist giving tactical advice to combat medical pilots flying life-saving missions. "Who the hell is this?" Chief Warrant Officer Thompson demanded over the radio, his voice thick with indignation and disbelief. "Since when does some paper pusher think she knows how to coordinate medical evacuations? Get her away from that radio immediately." But the voice of the Tactical Operations Center cut through the confusion, carrying sudden, genuine concern as intelligence reports began confirming the threat assessment. Dustoff flight. Intelligence is reporting that Firebase Charlie has been overrun by Taliban forces for the past 6 hours. There are no American casualties at that location requiring medical evacuation. Jennifer grabbed the radio handset firmly, despite the shocked protests and attempted interventions of the medical operations staff. All Dustoff aircraft, Taliban forces have been using captured American radio equipment to coordinate false medical evacuation requests. Firebase Charlie is a kill zone with multiple anti-aircraft positions targeting medical helicopters. Security, get that administrative worker away from flight operations immediately, Colonel Martinez barked from the command center, his voice carrying the authority of someone responsible for medical aviation safety. But before security personnel could respond, the situation escalated dramatically. Dustoff 6-1 taking heavy ground fire. Multiple surface-to-air missiles were hit and going down. The operations center fell into stunned silence, except for the sound of Thompson's labored breathing and the electronic warning tones from his aircraft transmitting over the radio. At 9,000 feet above the hostile Afghan mountains, the medical helicopter was falling toward terrain controlled by Taliban forces who had specifically planned this ambush. Jennifer pushed past the security personnel who were moving to restrain her and took complete control of medical operations. Her quiet, carefully maintained administrative specialist demeanor vanished entirely, replaced by the calm, absolute authority of someone who'd faced this exact tactical situation multiple times before. Dustoff 6-1. "This is Angel," she said, using her old special operations call sign for the first time in 3 years. "I've been through this ambush scenario before, and I'm going to talk you through the emergency procedures. Listen to my voice carefully and execute my instructions precisely." On the other end of the radio transmission, Chief Warrant Officer Thompson's extensive training immediately kicked in, despite the life-threatening circumstances. The call sign, Angel, was absolutely legendary among Black Hawk medical pilots, a Dustoff ace who'd conducted some of the most dangerous and successful medical evacuation missions in military history before mysteriously disappearing from active flying status. "Angel, is that really you?" Thompson's voice carried a mixture of desperate disbelief and sudden hope. I thought Angel was killed in action during a classified medical mission in Pakistan. Focus completely on flying your aircraft, Jennifer replied with the steady confidence of someone who'd survived impossible situations. Your hydraulic systems are damaged but still functional. Maintain auto-rotation airspeed and prepare for emergency landing in the valley below Fire Base Charlie. Avoid the ridge lines where anti-aircraft positions are located. In the operations center, Colonel Martinez stared at Jennifer with dawning recognition and growing amazement. The call sign Angel belonged to Major Jennifer Rodriguez, the most accomplished Black Hawk medical pilot in Army history, who disappeared from active duty after achieving a perfect record of successful medical evacuations during missions so classified that even acknowledging them required special authorization. Rodriguez? Martinez whispered in disbelief. Jennifer Rodriguez? But you were reported transferred to classified assignments after your special operations medical tour was completed. Jennifer ignored his recognition completely. Her total attention focused on guiding Chief Warrant Officer Thompson through the emergency with the precision and confidence that had made her legendary among special operations medical aviators. Dustoff 6-1, I need you to establish communication with ground forces and coordinate suppression of anti-aircraft positions. Your survival depends on eliminating the ambush before you reach the ground. Angel, we've lost both pilots to ground fire, came the terrified voice of the flight medic over the radio. Co-pilot and pilot are both wounded and unconscious. I don't know how to fly this helicopter. Jennifer felt time slow down as she realized the full scope of the emergency. A Black Hawk medical helicopter with wounded pilots was falling toward Taliban-controlled territory with only medical personnel aboard who had no flight training. It was the worst possible scenario in medical aviation. Medical crew member, this is Angel, Jennifer said with absolute calm. I'm going to talk you through flying the Black Hawk. Listen to my voice and follow my instructions exactly. You can do this. For the next 12 agonizing minutes, Jennifer talked a flight medic with no pilot training through the most impossible aircraft emergency in military aviation history. Using knowledge gained from years of special operations medical flying, she guided the medic through basic flight control, emergency procedures, and auto-rotation techniques that had never been taught to non-pilots. The emergency required the medic to manage helicopter controls with instructions delivered over radio while compensating for battle damage, wounded crew members, and enemy fire from the ground. Jennifer's guidance was so precise and effective that it seemed almost supernatural to the officers monitoring the emergency. When the Black Hawk touched down safely in a secure landing zone and all crew members were rescued by ground forces, the operations center erupted in spontaneous cheers and applause. But Jennifer simply set down the radio handset and walked calmly toward the administrative office exit, her cover thoroughly blown and her investigation completely compromised. Colonel Martinez caught up with her near the medical center entrance, his expression mixing respect, amazement, and demand for answers. Rodriguez, we need to talk immediately. Jennifer stopped walking, but didn't turn around to face him. My name is Jennifer Rodriguez. I'm an administrative specialist assigned to medical logistics. Cut the cover story, Martinez said firmly. I know exactly who you are. Major Jennifer Rodriguez, call sign Angel, the most accomplished Black Hawk medical pilot in Army history. You were supposed to be assigned to classified program. Finally, Jennifer turned to face Colonel Martinez directly. For the first time since arriving at Bagram Air Base, she stood with the full bearing and unmistakable presence of the elite medical pilot she actually was. Being officially transferred to administrative duties has significant operational advantages, Colonel. It allows you to investigate security breaches and enemy infiltration without being detected or compromised. Martinez's expression shifted from confusion to rapid understanding. You're here on a counterintelligence mission. The navigation system failures that have caused 3 Black Hawk medical helicopters to become lost over the past 4 months weren't coincidental equipment malfunctions, Jennifer explained with professional precision. Taliban forces have been using captured American radio equipment and compromised navigation data to coordinate false medical evacuation requests, luring medical helicopters into sophisticated anti-aircraft ambushes. And you've been working undercover as administrative personnel to identify how enemy forces gained access to our medical evacuation procedures. Jennifer nodded confirmation. Administrative specialists have access to flight schedules, medical protocols, and navigation systems for all medical evacuation operations. Over the past 5 months, I've systematically identified the security breaches and gathered sufficient evidence to prosecute the individuals responsible for providing classified information to enemy forces. That evening, Jennifer's investigation led to the arrest of a communications specialist and a medical logistics coordinator who'd been selling American medical evacuation procedures and navigation data to Taliban intelligence operatives. The security breach that had enabled multiple ambushes against medical helicopters was finally eliminated. The next morning, Jennifer found herself standing in Colonel Martinez's office wearing her proper flight uniform for the first time in 5 months. Her pilot wings and major's insignia restored and visible, her true identity finally revealed. Special Operations Command wants you back in active medical evacuation operations immediately, Martinez said, sliding flight orders across his desk. Your investigation is complete, and the Army needs experienced Dustoff pilots for upcoming classified missions. Jennifer looked out the window at the Black Hawks on the medical pad, their distinctive profiles representing the aircraft she'd mastered through years of the most dangerous medical missions in military aviation. What about Chief Warrant Officer Thompson and his crew? They all specifically requested to thank you personally. Thompson says your guidance saved their lives and taught him emergency procedures he never knew existed. They handled the emergency perfectly once they had proper instruction, Jennifer replied simply. That's what good medical crews do when properly supported. Later that day, when Chief Warrant Officer Thompson approached Jennifer on the flight line, she was no longer wearing administrative uniform. She stood in her proper flight suit, bearing the wings and insignia of one of the Army's most elite medical pilots, her true identity finally revealed. Major Rodriguez, Thompson said, extending his hand with genuine respect. I don't know how to properly thank you for saving our lives and our aircraft. By being the kind of pilot who would provide the same level of expertise to others when lives are at stake, Jennifer replied, shaking his hand firmly, and by remembering that the person handling your paperwork might know more about medical evacuation than you do. Over the following weeks, the story of the administrative specialist who saved a Black Hawk medical crew became legendary throughout the medical aviation community at Bagram. But for those who knew the complete truth, it served as a powerful reminder that heroes don't always wear obvious uniforms, and the most critical knowledge often comes from the most unexpected sources. Chief Warrant Officer Thompson, who dismissively called Jennifer "Coffee Girl" and questioned her expertise, quietly requested additional training on emergency procedures and threat recognition. He couldn't face the daily reminder that someone whose knowledge and experience so completely surpassed his own had been dismissed as a mere paper pusher and whose expertise had just saved multiple lives. Major Jennifer Rodriguez returned to active special operations medical flying, but her undercover investigation had taught her something valuable about perception, respect, and the nature of true expertise. Sometimes the most important work is done by people others choose not to see, and real competence doesn't require recognition to save lives and serve the mission. The Black Hawk medical evacuation program continued with enhanced security procedures, protected by improved communication protocols, and guided by pilots who finally understood that medical aviation requires more than just flying skills. It requires respect for the people who understand those operations better than anyone else.